I was slightly concerned that The Boatniks was going to be one of those films where I was watching it and not really enjoying it, and then I'd go to IMDb afterwards and find that it was really highly rated. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I have to say, it's not a terrible film as such, and I'm not the biggest fan of boat-based films in general, so I'm realizing that I'm not necessarily ever going to love it. But I also just feel like it wasn't very funny, it wasn't charming, it wasn't the best written. The performances were okay, and it was well shot. We did have some really nice shots of the water, but I just didn't find any of the characters engaging. The narrative wasn't that great. It doesn't seem like I'm alone either. This is a Disney film from 1970. It's directed by Norman Tokar. Tokar normally does some really brilliant films, so thankfully this isn't the first of their films that I've seen. If for whatever reason this is the only Norman Tokar film you've seen and you didn't like it, I'd say watch more of their work, because this to me is a bit of an anomaly. Written by Arthur Julian and Martin Roth, and it's about these coast guards and in particular Garland, played by Robert Morse, and the various things that happen on the water. And there's a woman who runs the sailing school, Kate, played by Stefanie Powers. I thought she was an interesting enough character. I kind of liked her whenever she was on screen. It doesn't mean I necessarily liked whatever was happening, but I found her relatively fascinating. There's nothing wrong with Garland as a character, but I didn't really take to him very much at all. And for about half of the film, maybe more than that, it's basically about how they interact with each other and Garland finding his feet as a coast guard, and then something potentially criminal happens, and it brings in a bit of action and a bit of tension and I guess a bit of uncertainty with how that part of the narrative will develop. So once something happens, it became a tiny bit more interesting, but I do think just a tiny bit. It really wasn't that interesting, and the pacing was very slow. Garland as a character is okay, and as I said, I quite liked Kate Fairchild. I didn't mind her. But honestly, there's not really anything about this that I found to be that engaging. It is well shot, as I said, and some of the water scenes were really beautiful. A lot more of it is set on the water than I expected, which I mean sounds like a weird thing to say when it's a film about a coast guard, but I imagine filming on the water is significantly more difficult than filming on dry land. So I was, pleasantly surprised with just how much of it actually was filmed um, with characters on various vessels and sometimes in the water as well. So credit where it's due, some things are okay. I only watched this because I'm watching all of Disney's films chronologically, and it's not one of those films where I'm going to say I'm pleased I had an excuse to see it, because I just didn't care for it. However, I don't necessarily regret the time having spent watching it. I can tick it off of my list. If you're into boat-based films, or if you like boats in general, you might like it. I've never sailed before. I've been on very few boats in my life, so that aspect didn't appeal to me. But judging it just as a film, I'd say it was average, maybe slightly below average actually. But if you're a Disney fan, give it a watch. Say you've seen it. Maybe you'll like it more than I did. I don't regret watching it, but I really highly doubt I'd ever watch The Boatniks again.